Hi there. Welcome to Retirement Your Way. I am Debbi Marcum, and I'd also love to welcome my co host, Jaclyn. How are you doing today, Jaclyn?
I am fantastic. I have missed you so much. We skipped a few weeks with the holidays and, we were super busy, but it's great to be back and it's a Monday. We're recording this on a Monday and I think we both can feel that it's a Monday.
It is a Monday, but it's also the beginning of a beautiful new year. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to today's topic. It's one that is very near and dear to my heart. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Debbie, without further ado, what are we going to be talking about today?
I think we need to talk about how to survive losing a spouse.
Mhm.
Having experienced that myself, and basically the reason I actually began this as a new career in my 60s, I think is a very important topic. We've lost some very near dear friends and clients. And so I think, just kind of helping them through some things that I did right and also to, you know, escape those things that I did wrong.
Yeah.
Because I discovered I did not know what I did not know.
Yes. Yeah, learn from mistakes
I agree.
and, you helping others learn from your mistakes is very beneficial. And I think, a lot of people can benefit from this emotionally, financially. There's a lot of questions surrounding this topic. And, people, it's exhausting. When you go through this, it's an exhausting process. It's a scary process. Nobody knows what to expect. And so having you there, at least to guide them or somewhat prepare them because no one's ever prepared for this, but somewhat prepare them and know that they have somebody in their corner.
I agree. And also to give someone a contact point, because so many people feel alone for the first time in their life. For
Mhm.
some individuals, it literally is the first time they have experienced days or weeks and months by themselves. And so everything is on their shoulders. And so going through that, uh, you need a support system. And it may not be who you expect it to be. I kind of discovered that those people that I thought would be there for me really could not handle it or did not know how to handle it. And some people stepped in that completely surprised me. So your support system could change, but I really learned to lean on them. And you
Mhm.
learn quite a bit going through that experience. And I'm just very grateful for those who stepped in and helped me because having that support system is huge. Uh, Learning who you can lean on.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can't prepare for that kind of stuff,
No,
right? And, you think that you have a great support system, but at the end of the day, they might not be the ones that you expected. And
you're right.
so you really won't know it until you're going through it. So as much as you can want to prepare for that and want to, have those solid relationships, it can take a turn.
It
So
can.
mentally preparing yourself for that just as much as you're trying to mentally prepare yourself for the loss of somebody is really tough.
I agree. If I can say one thing that I think is the most important thing, and that is there's not just one way to grieve. There's
Yeah.
not just one way to handle everything. Just like our own financial situations, everyone's situation is different. So it's not that there's a textbook on, okay, these are the things that you have to do in order to survive this. You kind of learn sometimes trial and error,
Mhm.
but having that support system is one thing that will really help you. So my first thing that really benefited me was being willing to reach out to people that had gone through this and actually saying,
Mhm.
okay, how did you survive this? My mother had passed away 4 months before my husband did, and I needed her so badly because she had already walked that walk. And,
Mhm.
she was not there. And I thought, whew, I really needed you now. So I learned to reach out to other people. And one of the best things I did was, connect with people that were going through it at the same time I was going through it or who had recently gone through it. And that was of great benefit. So I learned quite a bit from them, not only of things to do, but also things to avoid. I've always been very protective of people's privacy and my own privacy. But boy, did I really learn the importance of that, because one of the first things I learned is that creeps will come out of the woodwork. They scour obituaries. They are looking for vulnerable people, especially, I think women are more at risk as far as financial, risk, although we're not limited to. I have a client now that's experiencing, people coming
Mhm.
after his money. But you really have to be very, very protective. So one of the first things you need to do is make sure that everything is secure. So go to the banks, contact the credit cards that your spouse's name is under.
Mhm.
That is actually one of the first things I did after George died, was cancel his, I didn't cancel his credit cards. I let them know that he had passed away so that
Mhm.
no charges could be made on it, because I was worried about identity theft and someone starting accruing, you know, bills
Yeah.
under his name. And sure enough, people did attempt it, but because I had already put that alert on there, they caught it and it did not happen. So,
Wow.
I will say kudos to me for knowing to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, Being married to a banker did pay off. That's a, it kind of warned me about some of those things. Um, One thing that I did not do that I really wish I had done, because grief brain kicks in and your
Mhm.
memory is shot. For the
Uh-huh.
overwhelming majority of people that I talk to, that's the number one thing that they notice, that their memory was just hit. Your body is dealing with grief in so many ways that that part of your brain just designates to that. That's not important. I'm keeping you alive in other ways. So I should have written down who I talked to, when I had canceled things. So keeping a notebook of all of that financial information, I think, is especially important at that time.
Yeah.
That's one reason why you really need to have a trusted financial advisor.
Mhm.
Now, I have discovered, in this new career, that the overwhelming majority of widows actually change financial advisors within the first year.
Yes.
I mean, it's over 70%.
Wow.
Some people say that it's actually closer to 85% of women change financial advisors within the first year of losing their husband.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily that they don't trust their financial advisor. It's just that typically financial advisors lean more toward the men's
Mhm.
attitude about money and finances. And many wives are very comfortable with that. I was very comfortable with that. However, after his death, I discovered, okay, we had different views about how to handle things. For example,
Mhm.
the stock market frightened me to death,
Yeah. Your
and
risk tolerance.
the risk tolerance completely changed at that point. Loss of salary, loss of that support, loss of the, it's okay, we're in it for the long haul. And so I did change financial advisors, which for me was definitely the right decision. Um, I typically say don't make any huge changes within that first year. That
Mhm.
was a change that I did make. I knowingly made it. I did it thoughtfully and, with a lot of prayer. And for
Yeah.
me, it was the right financial decision, but it wasn't without a lot of thought and without a lot of research. So I think it is very, very important for especially women to have a trusted financial advisor
Mhm.
and become aware of all of your finances. You also need to kind of set a plan of, what are my goals? What are my goals financially? What do I want? Where do I want to be in 1 year? Where do I want to be in 5 years and 10
Mhm.
years? How do I want my assets distributed after I'm gone? Are those things set up correctly? So, next to a financial advisor, you then need to make sure that things are updated. Like, does your will or trust need to be updated?
Mhm.
Or, heaven forbid, you don't have a will or a trust and financial powers attorney, that should be one of the first things that you do. So, make sure that you've changed the beneficiaries, that you've had the name changes made on accounts. I recommend that you keep a joint bank account open for at least a year, but make it so that, his or her name cannot be used on it, so that those protections are set in place, and
Mhm.
have those beneficiaries set up on those accounts, because in all likelihood your spouse's name is on it, and so
Mhm.
those things need to be updated. They're not pleasant things to go through, because it's just a reminder once again that you've lost those things, but if you kind of take control over that, it gives you a sense of power and it starts that healing process. So managing those things, while painful, they're healing. And
Mhm.
so if you approach it in that way, I think that's also very helpful. Realizing that your life is not over, your life is changed
Mhm.
forever.
Yeah.
There's no going around that. For me, my mantra kind of became, I choose joy, because I just wasn't going to live in grief forever.
Mhm.
Um, Ironically, today is actually, it would have been my 46th wedding anniversary to my first husband. So kind of a
Wow.
bittersweet day, but it's got lots of wonderful memories. And, but I know he'd be thrilled that I not only chose joy, I also
Mhm.
chose to be as happy as I can. And I know he'd be very proud of me for that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I'm proud of you too. I mean, there's a lot
Thanks.
of things to be proud of, and as we enter a new year, I think this is a reminder that, you know, it's kind of a restart, and it can be for
Yeah.
yourself. And, I just wanna go back to the brief moment that, you talked about asking for help. And
Yeah.
as much as, you experienced this as a woman and, losing your husband, it can also be the other way around.
Yes.
And when husbands lose their wives, they lose that sense of ability to ask for help. And I'm not saying that that's, always the husband, or as a man, right? But it's typical. It's typical
Mhm.
for the man to have more of a troublesome or more, just a hard time asking for help. And you're going to need people to rely on. And especially during this process, there's a lot to remember, and no matter how smart you are, no matter how much brain capacity you have, you're going to forget things. Your
Mhm.
brain is crowded. Your brain is, clouded by judgment, whatever is going on. And so just kind of owning up that independency and saying it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to
Yeah.
have somebody in your corner that takes care of some things for you. Put things off on other people's plate if you can. And I think as a financial advisor, this is the one thing that you can put off on a financial advisor. Say, I'm okay. Like, this is my goals, these are my ambitions, and I'm okay letting you take it over, taking the
Mhm.
reins a little bit. And, I think you can experience that, Debbie, and go through that yourself, that it was probably a hard moment to go through by realizing I don't have control over this, but it's also a moment to realize it's okay not to have control over it.
I think it's easier for women. Women
Yeah.
are typically better at sharing ideas, sharing emotions. So, just as a whole, generally it is more difficult for men to ask for help. I've been very fortunate in that my male clients that have lost their spouse, I think because we already had a relationship, dealing financially, and because they knew I had already been through it, I think they were more willing to reach out to me. And so
Mhm.
within the first few days, I had several contact me. And to me, that's one of the highest compliments, because they're very vulnerable at that stage. So,
Yeah.
it's just essential. I also have other financial advisors contact me and say, okay, how do I help this client? Because unless you've been through it, you really, you can imagine, you can plan what to say, but emotionally you don't understand it. And so hopefully I've been able to provide them, with some of that. I've actually had a couple of advisors say, where can I get your book? And so they've sent that to their clients, which,
Mhm.
thrills me that they know to do that. But
Yeah.
asking for help is huge. And knowing how to protect yourself emotionally is also really
Mhm.
important, because it can, some of the strangest things can hit you. Shopping at a grocery store for the first time, going to a restaurant by yourself for the first time, those are frightening things.
Mhm.
um, and things will hit you just out of the blue that you don't anticipate.
Mhm.
Not being able to zip your own dress up by yourself can just throw you into an emotional trauma for a few
Yeah.
hours. So you can anticipate those. You can anticipate the things like taking care of the finances, keeping a
Mhm.
notebook of everything, writing as much down as you can. I encourage people to write a journal of your emotions.
Mhm.
Um, write your spouse a letter. I mean, I fussed at George about all of the CDs and albums that he had purchased over the years after he died. And also, I bought an Apple phone just to say, okay, you didn't want one? I bought one now because you died on me.
Oh, I love that. That is the
So,
best. And, I'm so glad that you brought up the emotional part of this because at the end of the day, we always you are where I guess both of us, we're very financially focused, right? We're money oriented, we're numbers, whatever. But the reality is that there's so much emotion that goes into your finances that I think a lot of people don't realize. They
I
just
agree.
think this is how much I make, this is what should do that, this is, percentage here, percentage there. That's not the reality. We're
No.
talking about your risk level. We're talking about there's so many emotions that go into it that sometimes I'd say, Debbie is a little bit of a therapist while you're doing this too,
I
right?
have felt that way at times.
Yes. And so there's so much that goes into financials regarding this, but I do want to just kind of come up with maybe a quick checklist for our listeners that are maybe going through this, financially. A big one is taxes.
Yes.
And the you're going to be filing completely different
Mhm.
and it's going to be a little bit of a shock.
And
And
possibly getting hit with a huge tax bill after you've
yes.
lost that income. That was one of the
Yes.
biggest shocks for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, we kind of talked about the beneficiaries and how important that is, or maybe the bank account. So, Debbie, could you maybe create, a 5-step plan for our listeners of maybe just a quick check off, do right when it happens or prior to? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm actually right in the process of it, and I'm planning on posting it on my website and also on our Facebook page. Okay, these are things that you have to take care of within the
Mhm.
first month. These are things that you have to take care of within the first 6 months. This is the
Yeah.
first year because that list grows and it changes as things progress. And I did that because, unlike you, I was not financially minded.
Yeah.
I avoided I avoided all of that like the plague. And then when it was all on my shoulders, I realized, whoo, this was not a wise decision. So I had to learn from the ground up. And so I'd like to help people kind of avoid that so that not only would this guideline be for those that have just lost, but also let's prepare for what if.
Mhm.
I think the what if is important. What are you going to do if you lose a spouse?
Mhm.
Because those are things that you don't anticipate. We don't want to think about, but are you ready for those things if that happens? I mean, people
Mhm.
that are smart enough to get life insurance have done that to some extent, but
Mhm.
it goes beyond having a set amount of money available. It
Yeah.
is, how do you handle those things? Who do I need to contact? What finances do I need to immediately start to handle? And so I'm actually in the process, I'm about halfway through of these are the things that you need to immediately take care of. These are the resources that are available for you. For example,
Mhm.
if your spouse was a veteran, that's one thing that you need to contact because the veteran benefits can be huge. Um,
Wow.
Obviously, contacting your lawyer if you have one of the first things that you should do, because if you have a will or trust, you need those updated. Because
Mhm.
I have, dear friends that in their 50s, they both died within 4 weeks of each other this past
Mhm.
summer, and none of that was set up. And so their family
Wow.
is having to deal with all of that. So I think preparing for the what ifs are important, not
Mhm.
just when you lose a spouse. Go ahead and
Mhm.
anticipate that someday there's a possibility that my spouse may die, and
Mhm.
so, what do I need to do? What do I need to have set in place if that ever happens? And if they don't, things are still set up in place, and it's beneficial to you both, even if you're lucky enough to not lose a spouse. But at least you're
Mhm.
not having to start at ground zero when that happens. So that
Yeah.
should be up within the next 2 weeks. That will be on my Facebook and on my website.
Well, perfect. And I also want to say, this is kind of a saying in the financial world is you're preparing for the worst, hoping for the
Hoping for the
best.
best.
And that's something that will be used and that I'm sure you will say all the time to your clients. And that's the truth, right? But
Mhm.
we also want to mentally prepare ourselves, financially prepare ourselves, but not always worry,
I
right?
agree.
And having a financial advisor takes a little bit of that away from you because you don't have to worry about, where the stocks are every day. You don't have to
Mhm.
worry about, if what's going to happen and what do I have to do and da 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 da. It's you're prepared for it
Mhm.
and you're going to take it on and your financial advisor is going to help you take it on and you've got somebody in your corner at all times and that's a great feeling because
I
you can
agree.
live life too.
I get thanked so often by my clients. I mean, the majority of my clients are retirees, and I get thanked so often because, they tell me, I didn't realize the stress that this had taken
Mhm.
on me. I did not understand the worrying that I was doing. It was just there in the back of my mind. And once I sat down with you and everything is in its place, I'm sleeping better. I'm more relaxed. That's one thing off of my plate. And yeah, that thrills me when they share those little
Yes.
platitudes.
Yes, I agree. Well, I mean, as we kind of conclude today's episode, I think there's a lot to remember when it comes to losing a spouse. And it's also a lot to remember, just surviving it and financially, emotionally, so many things. But having a financial advisor in your corner is step number one.
I agree.
And I think we can, all agree on that and move forward with that. So for our listeners and viewers out there, make sure to contact a financial advisor. And, Debbie, how can our listeners reach out to you?
You can call my office at 1-866-247-5695, and my operations manager, Andy, will be more than happy to help you and put you in touch with me.
Well, perfect. And for our listeners, please check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music, where you can subscribe and also be notified when every episode comes out. And also, we are looking forward to having a YouTube channel soon. So go subscribe there so then you'll be notified as soon as our first video is posted. And as always, we'll be posting to Facebook as well. So keep up to date on all of our episodes. But Debbie, it was great to see you again,
Great to
and
see
I
you
will
too.
hopefully see you next week. And Happy New Year to all of our listeners.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Bye.